Right now, issues surrounding war and peace seem to be with us on a daily basis. Coming up, a Nobel Peace Prize winner will share how close he believes we are to a nuclear war. Also, the city of Atlanta wants employees back in the office and its remote workforce slashed. We'll talk about that coming up. And the lottery is coming up with a new and improved game. Are you willing to pay the new and improved price? I'll serve it my take. This is The Take. Let's get it. Hello and welcome. I'm Chesley McNeil, and this is The Take, where we go above and beyond the headlines, and we like to bring in experts to give their take and expertise on the top stories affecting you and your community. This week, a Russian missile airstrike injured 88 people, including at least 17 children, in a city 20 miles from its border into Ukraine. This came while the United States delegation was meeting with the Kremlin negotiators in Saudi Arabia to find an end to the 3-year war in Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Israeli military is expanding its activities into Gaza as bombing has resumed in the region. Israeli airstrikes have killed more than 700 people in Gaza in just over a week since the country shattered its 2-month-old ceasefire deal with Hamas. Strikes in Gaza over the weekend pushed the death toll to more than 50,000 since the war began in October of 2023. The issues of war and peace seem to dominate our headlines almost every day. Now, one former Nobel Peace Prize winner is saying the world is closer than ever to the onset of nuclear war, and we'll explain more of that tonight at Morehouse College. But he joins us now, Dr. Ira Helfand, co-founder of Back from the Brink, a national grassroots campaign to rid the world of nuclear weapons, is joining us on the show. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Now, you mentioned those situations in Ukraine. I mentioned your situations in Ukraine and Gaza. Are these really stronger flashpoints to us being on the brink of nuclear war?
Well, I think the war in Ukraine is certainly a huge flashpoint that could lead to nuclear conflict, but there are many others in the world as well. U.S.-China relations, the situation in Korea, the situation in South Asia, which most Americans don't pay much attention to. These are all places where nuclear-armed states are in extremely adversarial relations with each other and where conflict could break out and could lead to nuclear war.
Are we talking?
This is not my assessment. This is the assessment of really important security experts like former Defense Secretary William Perry.
Mm-hmm. Are you talking years, months? How long are we talking?
We don't know. It could be months. It could be this afternoon. I mean, this is an incredibly dangerous situation, and we are essentially sleepwalking into a nuclear disaster. We are closer than we've ever been. We now understand that even a limited nuclear war, as might take place between India and Pakistan, could kill up to 130 million Americans and 2 billion people worldwide. And we're ignoring this problem at our great peril.
What does this mean for us in the United States, really?
It means that we need to change our nuclear policy. The Back from the Brink campaign advocates for the United States to acknowledge that nuclear weapons, while they may make us strong, don't make us safe. And as a national security priority, we need to seek their elimination worldwide, not calling on the United States to disarm unilaterally, but to lead an effort to bring all 9 countries which have nuclear weapons into negotiations for a verifiable treaty to eliminate their arsenals according to agreed upon timetable. This is an urgent national security priority, and the U.S. government should be pursuing this. We're not. We haven't been. It has not been our policy, and that has to change. So Back from the Brink is organizing communities around the country to help educate people so that people understand the enormity and imminence of the danger we face, and to motivate them to take action, to get their leaders in Congress, in the White House, to change U.S. nuclear policy in ways that actually make the American people safe.
I understand that you're going to Morehouse tonight to talk about this. What's the goal in getting young people involved in it?
Well, you know, young people have been enormously important leaders in the fight to avert a climate disaster. They have not been as involved to date in the effort to stop the threat slide towards nuclear war, largely because they don't know about this issue. We've done a terrible job of educating the younger generation about the nuclear threat. And so it's really a great pleasure for me to be able to speak at a place like Morehouse and talk to students and help them understand that even as they are concerned about the climate crisis and many other issues, they also now need to be concerned about preventing nuclear war. And a new organization has started nationally called Students for Nuclear Disarmament that is working closely with the Back from the Brink campaign. There's a chapter at Morehouse, there's a chapter at Georgia State, and we are hoping to expand those chapters and to develop many other chapters here in Georgia and around the country.
Well, Dr. Helfand, you're very knowledgeable at this. What is your talk going to be about? I'm sure you're not going to try to scare them into this, but are you trying to educate? What are you going to talk about the most?
No, I am going to try to scare people. I think we should be frightened.
Gotcha.
And if we're not frightened, we're not going to take the action that we need. But I have 3 messages that I want to bring to people. One is that nuclear war really can happen. It's not some, leftover thing that we used to worry about in the 80s, but we don't need to care about anymore. Secondly, that if it does happen, it's going to be more catastrophic than we can possibly imagine. And third, and most importantly, it does not have to happen. We can prevent nuclear war. We can eliminate nuclear weapons. It is up to us whether we do that or not.
And what's the goal for these young people to try to stop this?
Well, I would hope that they would, as I mentioned, expand the chapters of Students for Nuclear Disarmament. We have a resolution pending in the Congress, and we're hoping that the Georgia Congressional Delegation will sign on to that resolution as co-sponsors, and hoping that the students will become active in promoting that. We'd also love to see the city of Atlanta adopt a resolution supporting the Back from the Brink campaign, as 80 other cities around the country have done already. And it would be great if the Georgia State Legislature passed a resolution also. So there are numerous ways that the public can express their support for this effort to end the nuclear threat. And students, I think, and young people in general can play a tremendously important role in educating the whole population about this and bringing about this needed change in policy.
Well, Dr. Helfand, you've gotten my interest in this as well, and so hopefully you'll get a lot more tonight. And if you want to hear, thanks for joining us, by the way, and if you want to hear more from the good doctor here, his address will be tonight at 5:30 at the Martin Luther King International Chapel on Morehouse's campus. All right, other headlines for this Tuesday. Later today, under the Gold Dome, the House Education Committee is expected to discuss and debate Senate Bill 1, also known as the Fair and Safe Athletic Opportunities Act. If passed, it would ban transgender athletes from competing in women's sports at state-funded schools, including colleges and universities. Today, state regulators will hold hearings on Georgia Power's 2025 plan. The utility projects a surge in demand by 2030, largely driven by new data centers. Customers are concerned as bills have already increased by an average of $43 per month since 2020. All right, and you may be using your air conditioning over the next couple of days as temperatures will rise. Today, we're looking at temperatures getting up to about 77 degrees. Not bad. It's my pick for the week. We'll go down just a smidge. Got a front that's going to move through. It's a dry front, so it's not going to change much except for our winds. Our winds will shift to cool us off just a little bit. 73 degrees will be the high temperature on Wednesday. By Thursday, we're looking at 72 degrees. Back up to 78 by Friday with a few more clouds working into the area. Some of that moisture will start to return to our area with that southerly flow coming back in. Saturday, a mix of sun and clouds, and then that rain chance starts to increase on us for the latter half of the weekend. 40% chance for the rain coming to us by Sunday, and then a front will come through the area as we head into Monday. That will keep our chance for rain in play, so the temperatures will start to go down just a little bit. You're looking at 75 degrees for the high temperature on Monday. So it's going to be a very dry week, which means, and warm, which means those pollen numbers will start to go up as well. Got an all-time, the highest we've seen for the season so far. We saw just yesterday in the 3,000 count, so more of those days certainly to come. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this. All right, welcome back to the show. Today we're learning more about what appears to be a major national security breach, plans for a military strike being discussed on an unclassified messaging app. Joining us now is NBC Washington correspondent Alice Barr. And Alice, this is coming through Atlantic Magazine. Walk us through what we know about this alleged leak.
Yeah, so the White House is in damage control. It says it's reviewing how a journalist was accidentally added to a group chat with top U.S. officials discussing sensitive military plans to bomb Iranian-backed Houthi forces in Yemen earlier this month. These attacks have already happened. And critically, why those officials used the unclassified commercial messaging app Signal instead of some of the classified channels that they have available. The Atlantic Magazine's editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, says he was added by National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and took screenshots of the messages, including from Vice President J.D. Vance, from Waltz, and from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who sought to discredit Goldberg Goldberg and downplay the discussions. Goldberg disputes what Hegseth is saying, as Hegseth saying that he did not text any war plans. Goldberg disputes that, saying Hegseth shared some details that were too sensitive to quote directly, but that had to do with the specific timing of a future attack, specific targets, including human targets meant to be killed in the attack, weapons systems. He said it was a minute-by-minute accounting of what was about to happen. The National Security Council said the chat appears to be authentic, while arguing that there were no threats to our service members or our national security. There's certainly been outrage on Capitol Hill. The White House is saying that President Trump still has the utmost confidence in his national security team, but this one is going to play out for a little while yet.
I bet. Defense Secretary Hegseth he came out hard, as you mentioned, against this, and now is he backtracking on it, or is he just keeping silent now?
No, he's kept with that statement from yesterday when he said, you know, that he first of all attempted to discredit this journalist pretty harshly, had some harsh things to say about him. And he is someone who's come up against President Trump in the past, Goldberg has. And then he said, I will just say that there were no war plans texted, and I'm going to leave it at that. That's where he has left it, though. I will note that NBC's Garrett Haake spoke by phone with President Trump this morning and has gotten his first substantive reaction to all of this. He expressed confidence in his team. He downplayed the contents of the discussion. He said he wasn't frustrated by the events that led up to this. He said it really had nothing to do, no impact on the Houthi strikes that were successful. And he basically chalked it up to saying that critics are trying to come up with something negative to say because he says we've had so many successes. President Trump was asked directly about whether he still had confidence in Mike Waltz. And the president said that he thinks one of his staffers had accidentally added Goldberg to that chain. But he was, asked about whether he still had confidence in Waltz, and he said yes, that Michael Waltz has learned a lesson and that he's a good man.
All right. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill seem to be in an uproar of this, naturally, right? Do we expect to see any hearings called as a result of this at all?
Yeah, so there happens to be a big hearing today on the worldwide threats that gathers intelligence community leaders. And so we're going to hear from the Director of National Intelligence. We're going to hear from the CIA Director, both of whom were on that text thread. They happen to be included on there. And they're both set to testify today. And as we understand it, they are going to take questions on this. So I think a lot more may develop throughout the day today.
All right, Alice Barr, we're going to stay on top of this one, of course, and so we'll continue to ask you these questions as things begin to develop. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right. The city of Atlanta is now mandating that employees return to in-person office work. 11Alive have received a copy of a memo telling workers that they must come back to the City Hall by April 10th. It adds that the city staffers must go to their offices at least 3 days a week, but requirements will vary based on position. Meanwhile, the return to office for federal workers has been met with some pushback. In recent days, rallies have been taking place all over the nation, including one outside of the Atlanta-based CDC. President Trump ordered federal employees back to the office full-time as part of his administration's mandate to make government bureaucracy less costly and more efficient for the American people. It's not just government agencies. In recent months, staffers across corporate America, from Amazon to Dell to Walmart, have been told that their days of working remotely is over, at least for that employer. Here now to talk a little bit more about it, the battle between in-office and remote working. Davika Bridge, she is the founder and CEO of Bridge the Gap Consulting. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me. So good to be back.
All right. Talk to me about the pros and cons of in-person and office working.
The topic that's a hot one right now. But, like anything, there are pros and cons. And I would say the pros of being in office and, having that physical presence in the workforce is a few things: flexibility and autonomy. So, when we're working in the office, we're able to have the flexibility to talk with different leaders, build rapport, have relationships with people that we, typically would be difficult for us to build that rapport through the virtual space. And so when we talk about building relationships with leaders and decision makers, that actually has a direct impact on your career advancement and growth opportunities, right? So when we're working from home, it's challenging to do those things, and it actually limits your opportunities if you're looking to accelerate in your career. Wider talent pools, right? So that's a pro of remote work. You're able to actually look for talent that's outside of just the exact radius of that office. But for folks who, enjoy working from home, they like the flexibility of not having to spend time commuting, often in, traffic that takes a lot of time away that they could actually be productive and using that time to actually, progress company goals, team objectives, and all of those great things. What I'm also hearing a lot is isolation and burnout. So when you are working from home, it's harder to disconnect from your work, right? You tend to want to be online. You have different types of people really reaching out for your support and help. But when you're in office, you're able to, create some more boundaries. You're able to walk away, take breaks. If people know you're not at your desk, maybe they'll circle back with you later. So working from, remotely from your home, it creates lack of boundaries sometimes if you're not managing it correctly.
Davika, I remember working from home kind of exploded during the pandemic, and it seemed to be sort of a saver, right, for companies not having to turn on the lights, not having to worry about that building. Are you surprised that there's a surge to get people back?
No, I'm not surprised. This was a conversation I was having, mid-pandemic, where people would say, Davika, do you think that this is going to last? And I said, no, I don't. Look, there are some organizations and companies that don't have a large real estate footprint, so they are okay being completely remote. There's a lot of companies I know that have no intention of ever calling their employees back to office because it works, and they're, leading with intention, purpose. They're creating times where their teams can come together and foster collaboration. So they've made it work. But larger organizations with a global footprint, perhaps, they have a lot of real estate. They have a lot of resources, utility bills, all of those things that are, going to waste when we don't have, people in the building, in their seats. And so I think, during the pandemic, there were kind of emergency protocols in place that people had to adapt to. And now, now that the world is back to normal, folks are saying, hey, it's time to go back to business as usual. And that's what we're seeing right now. And there's, a lot of frustration around that. But a lot of valid points as well. We
learned a lot from the in-person, at least at home working. Davika, do you see in 5 years, maybe 10 years, it going back to it, even though we're going back into the office now? Do you see a reversal on it?
I'm not quite sure. I think it really depends on each corporation, their cultures and values, how connected their leadership is with hearing employee feedback, and those corporations that do a more diligent job of wanting to create employee satisfaction. I think there will be more nimbleness and flexibility, but there are corporations that have proven success in how they want to see things done, and they are going to stick to that. And so it's up to the professional to really understand, hey, what do I need for myself, right? Where am I going to thrive? How do I make sure that I'm able to not only progress in my career, but that all these other factors that I've been able to create space for over the last 5 years is still accommodated? And so I think of immediately caregivers, right, or parents. There have been folks who are now, their norm is being able to balance these components most effectively. And now we're having those folks go back into the office. So now they're spending more time commuting. They're spending more time away from the home, which could be impacting the normalcy that they've built over the last 5 years. So it's really a nuanced experience, and I think it's just up to corporations to determine your culture, your values, your intention, and really communicate that with purpose. And then it's up to the professional to make a decision on what best suits you in your career and life.
All right, Davika Bridge, co-founder and CEO of Bridge the Gap Consulting. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for the insight. All right, folks, don't go anywhere. We're back right after this. All right, welcome back to the show. Cell phones are an essential part of our lives, and they're constantly evolving to help make our lives a lot easier. For those with cognitive and physical disabilities, they can serve as a vital link. Here to help us find some hacks this morning is Courtney Linwall, a home and technology reporter for Consumer Reports. Welcome to the show, Courtney.
Thanks for having me.
All right, talk to us about the average life of a cell phone. What's the average shelf life of a cell phone?
So most phone manufacturers support operating system updates and security updates for usually between 5 to 7 years. Most people don't keep their phones for quite that long, usually between 2 and 5 years, but you can certainly keep them longer, and it's a good way to save money, and it's more sustainable to keep them for as long as the phone manufacturer supports the upgrades.
Now here's a question you may or may not know. Seems like the cell phone starts acting up when it's time to switch, right? When they want you to buy another one. Is that true?
It definitely can. Most people report that battery life is one of the first things that can kind of deteriorate over time, but it's also possible to just get the battery replaced. And so that's a way to, extend the life of your phone without having to go and completely replace it.
What are the key things people are now looking for when it comes to getting a new phone?
People want a great smartphone camera, and a lot of them have pretty incredible cameras these days with multiple lenses. They want, like I said, battery life that lasts all day. And they want a high resolution display so that when you're scrolling social media, FaceTime with your family, the image looks great. Consumer Reports tests these smartphones on all these metrics, and these scores are available for Consumer Reports members. But people also tend to want a smartphone that plays well with their other devices. So if you're someone who has an Apple TV, AirPods, a MacBook computer, you probably want an iPhone to live in the Apple world, and vice versa if you have an Android phone.
Android man myself, How about those features we talked about with cognitive and physical disabilities? What are some of the features for those folks?
There's quite a few now. These have been developing over the last decade. So Carla Noboa, she's a research specialist at Consumer Reports. She recently wrote a story about all the iPhone accessibility features that have made a really big impact for her life. So, for example, one of those features is she has debilitating motion sickness, and so Apple has come out with a feature called vehicle motion cues. So it basically puts little dots on your phone, and so if you're in a car, the dots kind of align visually, and so with the way your car is moving, so it helps your body kind of sync what you're visually seeing and what your body is feeling, and that can really reduce motion sickness. Another feature is called reduce motion on an iPhone, and so basically it just slows down the speed of scrolling on a phone, and so that can really reduce the dizziness you might experience if you have to be on your phone for a long time. So those are two of the ones that have made a big impact in her life.
Gotcha. All right. So those gamers out there, what type of phones should they be looking for?
For the gamers, you said?
Yes. Don't want to leave them out.
Any kind of digital assistant, I think, that is going to be integrated into your phone is going to make your phone more able to be used specifically for you. So assistive touch is one that can set personalized shortcuts on your phone. You can set it up at the top. And also digital assistants like iPhone Siri or Samsung's Bixby. These are really great if you have your hands full and you want to ask your phone to do something while you're using it another way. These are becoming more integrated and more powerful, and they're developing every year. They're able to do more things on your phone.
Gotcha. Last question, Courtney. Are you Android or Apple?
I'm an Apple user, so I really like the iPhone, but I write about all the smartphones at Consumer Reports, and so there are lots of other options. You don't just have to use an iPhone. There are lots of other options that have great cameras, great screens, and so yes, lots of other options across the price range too.
All right, sounds good. Courtney Lindenwald with Consumer Reports. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for that insight this morning.
Thank you so much.
All right, don't go anywhere, folks. I'm back with my final take right after this. All right, before we go, a question for you folks. Are you currently playing the Mega Millions? Well, if you are, you're not alone. It's one of the more popular lotteries in the United States. The game is going through some changes next month. The lottery announced a mega revamp featuring improved odds of winning, larger and more frequent jackpots, higher starting prizes, and faster growing prize pools. All that sounds great, but are you willing to pay the new price tag? Mega Millions ticket will double in price starting in April from $2 to $5. Is it worth it? Well, your odds of winning is still 1 in 290 million. You may want to apply that $5 to a carton of eggs or gas for your car. Those are going up as well, folks. Gotta be smarter, gotta be smarter. Sounds good, but I don't know. 1 in 280 million. If you win, hook me up. Thanks for joining us today, folks. Have a great day.